She wore the uniform of honor, trained among the toughest, and carried the pride of a nation on her shoulders. Yet in a single moment, that pride was stripped away, inside a courtroom where truth was supposed to matter most. The people who should have respected her turned against her, not for what she had done, but for who she was. And when the doors opened and silence fell, everything changed. How could justice twist so sharply against one of its own? Before the headlines, before the courtroom whispers, she was simply known as Maya, a soldier, a daughter, a woman who had defied every odd stacked against her. Born in a neighborhood where opportunity was a rumor, she chose the hardest path imaginable, the Navy SEALs. The training broke many, but not her. She rose through the ranks, proving herself not only as a sniper, but as one of the sharpest minds in her unit. To those who served beside her, she was respected. To those back home, she was a symbol of what was possible. Yet outside the uniform, in the quiet spaces of her life, Maya carried herself with a calm strength. Grocery runs, calls to her mother, morning jogs through quiet streets. Normalcy balanced the storm of her profession. But for some, her very existence, a black woman in a role reserved for legends, was too much. The same nation she swore to protect did not always see her as equal. And it was only a matter of time before that truth revealed itself in the harshest way possible. What began as an ordinary day in court was about to unravel into a moment that would test not only Maya's dignity, but the very meaning of justice itself. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and cold authority, but for Maya, it felt more like a battlefield. She had walked into those doors expecting routine, an administrative hearing, a chance to clear her name from an accusation so thin it should never have made it this far. But as she sat down, she noticed the stares. Not curious, not respectful, heavy, suspicious. They weren't looking at a decorated Navy SEAL. They were looking at a black woman, daring to exist in a uniform they couldn't imagine her wearing. The prosecutor wasted no time. Words like discipline, conduct, and breach of duty were tossed out, but none of them carried weight. The real message, unspoken but loud, was that she did not belong. Evidence was flimsy, questions were twisted, and every time she answered, her voice was interrupted, cut down, doubted. It wasn't about justice. It was about breaking her in public piece by piece. The whispers grew louder in the gallery. Some smirked, others shook their heads. Maya felt heat rising in her chest, not from guilt, but from humiliation. How could a woman who had carried a rifle through enemy territory, who had watched men twice her size follow her lead in combat, be reduced to this? Her attorney pushed back, but the tide was against them. Every objection was brushed aside. Every defense was drowned beneath the gavel's cold echo. And then, the moment came. Two officers moved toward her, hands ready to shackle wrists that had once steadied the nation's deadliest weapons. Gasps rippled through the room as the command was read. She was under arrest. Maya's heart pounded, but her eyes stayed forward. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing fear. Yet inside, a storm raged. Arrested? For what? For being too bold? For not fitting the image they wanted? The clink of metal cuffs echoed like thunder. Her mother's face flashed in her mind, her team's loyalty, her years of sacrifice, all erased with a single motion. She was being dragged, not for her actions, but for her existence. And then, silence. The doors at the back creaked open. Polished shoes struck the floor with measured weight. A decorated uniform entered the courtroom, silver and stars glinting under the harsh lights. Every head turned. The Admiral. His presence carried authority that could shatter the performance unfolding before them. For a split second, Maya felt the weight of the cuffs on her wrists against the weight of what might come next. Would he stand with her, or stand against her? The air was thick, the tension unbearable. The courtroom waited. Every breath held. Every eye fixed on a man who just walked in. The courtroom was supposed to be a place of truth, but from the moment Maya stepped inside, it felt hostile. She stood tall in her pressed uniform, metals gleaming faintly under the fluorescent lights, but the way the crowd stared stripped her of all dignity. They didn't see a decorated SEAL sniper who had risked her life countless times. They saw a black woman in a place they believed she didn't belong. The prosecutor's voice was sharp, dripping with disdain. He didn't accuse her outright of crimes. Instead, he used words designed to cut slowly: reckless judgment, failure to follow proper code, unfit for service. Each phrase twisted the image of her years of sacrifice into something ugly. Maya tried to respond with clarity, with facts, but every time she spoke, her words were sliced apart, drowned by objections sustained with barely a thought. Her lawyer fought, raising evidence, questioning motives, but it was like shouting into the wind. Every objection overruled, every truth ignored. Maya's chest tightened with each dismissal, her pulse quickening as she realized this wasn't hearing. It was a performance, and the outcome was already written. The gallery shifted with whispers that burned hotter than any bullet she had faced in combat. She doesn't belong here. She's making excuses. A SEAL? Impossible. Their voices weren't loud, but they cut deeper than the prosecutor's accusations. Then the gavel slammed. Cold words fell from a bench. She is hereby placed under arrest. Time slowed. Two uniformed officers approached, their steps echoing like drumbeats of shame. The same hands that once steadied the nation's most precise rifle were now pulled forward, wrists bound by steel cuffs. Gasps erupted across the room, some in shock, some in satisfaction. Maya kept her chin high, but inside she was burning. Not from fear, but from the cruelty of it all. She had carried her nation's flag through the most dangerous terrain, fought enemies most people would never see. And now, in her own country, in a place meant for justice, she was treated like a criminal. As the cuffs tightened, a memory flashed. Her commanding officer once telling her, "You'll always have to fight twice as hard for half the respect." She never thought those words would echo here, in a courtroom meant to honor truth. And then, just as the officers turned to escort her out, the air shifted. The heavy wooden doors at the back creaked open. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Each one carrying a weight the entire room could feel. The gallery's whispers stopped. The prosecutor froze mid-sentence. Even the judge's gavel hesitated. A uniform appeared, polished shoes, crisp white fabric, silver stars gleaming. An admiral. The silence was suffocating. Maya's heart thudded in her chest. Would he condemn her, like the rest, or finally break the cycle of injustice unraveling before her eyes? Every eye turned, every breath held. The next word spoken in that room would change everything. The Admiral's voice cut through the silence like a blade. He demanded the charges be reviewed, demanded the evidence that never truly existed. Within minutes, the narrative that had been so carefully built against Maya began to crumble. The cuffs were removed, but the sting remained. The damage wasn't just in the false accusations or the humiliation. It was in the reminder that her worth, her loyalty, her sacrifice could be questioned simply because of the color of her skin. Maya walked out of that courtroom free, but freedom felt heavier than ever. She had carried the weight of battlefields, but this battle, against prejudice, against erasure, was one she had never truly escaped. Her story is not isolated. For every Maya who is vindicated, there are countless others who are silenced, punished, or forgotten. Courtrooms, classrooms, workplaces, different arenas, but the same fight. Racism doesn't always arrive with fists or fire. Sometimes it comes in suits and gavels, in subtle words and silent stares. What happened that day was bigger than Maya. It was a mirror held up to a nation that prides itself on justice, while too often denying it to those who need it most. So the question lingers. How many more times must this story repeat? How many more voices must be dragged down before the truth finally breaks through? Her courage is a reminder, her pain a warning, her survival a call. To see, to speak, to change. Because silence, in the face of injustice, is not neutrality. It is complicity. And the next chapter of this story? That depends on us. Disclaimer. The stories shared on this channel are works of fiction created solely for entertainment. We believe in a world where everyone deserves equal rights and where society advances through fairness, justice, and compassion. Our goal is to share thought-provoking narratives that inspire positive change. Any resemblance to real people, events, or organizations is purely coincidental. These stories do not reference actual individuals or entities and carry no political or religious implications.